Who would ever suspect a woman of being a fortune hunter? It's evil.
I'm building a hotel.
What?
With the town expanding, the demand for such things will only become greater.
With your superior intellect and powers of persuasion, you could run the whole of Halifax.
It's very exciting to meet you because I'm a big fan of the show, and it's been a long time since season one. Yeah. As I was watching the new episodes, I didn't feel like it was like it has been 3 years.
Uh-huh.
Like it feels so organic to get back to it, like you haven't missed the beat.
Oh, good.
Which is something that sometimes happens, after a long hiatus. But still, I want to know about the process of getting back to the story after so much time. And did the pandemic or the long time between seasons affect the show, the story, or the characters in any way?
Not really, because I started writing it before the pandemic kicked in.
Oh.
I think I'd written about 5 episodes before the pandemic started, so it didn't really affect me in terms of the writing process. It did a little bit because as I wrote the last 3, the pandemic had started, and time kind of stood still for a while.
Yeah.
And so I think I wrote the first 5 episodes in 5 months, and I wrote the second 3 in about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was an effect of the pandemic.
So
the biggest effect of the pandemic on us was the shooting period, because we were due to start filming in, I think, the June, and that got pushed on because Saran hadn't finished filming Vigil. And I think that's why I took my foot off the accelerator with writing the script.
Yeah.
So we got pushed on to August, and then I think we got pushed on till November, and then we started filming on the 8th of November, and then we got closed down 4 times because of COVID. So it actually took something like a year to film, and I think that was the worst kind of how we were affected by the pandemic.
So when you sat down to plan and write these new episodes before the pandemic, where did you want Anne and Miss Walker's relationship and characters to go?
I wanted them to be at Shibden Hall as a married couple, living their life as a fairly conspicuous married couple, even though no one actually talks about it in that language because they haven't got the language for it. But I wanted to explore what it was like to live as open a gay marriage as you could at that time, and what the pressures were on them externally from Anne Walker's family, and then from the Halifax society and the wider world, how that impacts on them, and also the effect that has internally between them on their relationship. And I wanted to dramatise just how difficult it was for them to negotiate that marriage in society and not fall foul of polite society, not become ostracised from polite society, but to negotiate their way through society so that they were still a part of it. And also I wanted to show how Anne Walker's life had definitely become enriched by marrying Anne Lister. It was never a match made in heaven. I think the external factors on it would never have allowed it to have been a marriage made in heaven, but for me it was about how Anne Walker, who was starstruck by Anne Lister, really had her life improved massively because Anne Lister took her travelling. She introduced her to people, and she really enriched her life. So, it was a mixed bag of a marriage, but that was the plan anyway with season 2. It was to dramatise how you could conduct a gay marriage at that time in a society that just didn't have, a language for it.
There is another factor that it's very important to their relationship, which is family. And there is a very beautiful scene in episode 2 where Anne Lister tells Anne Walker something along the lines of, "I've shed many tears over Anne over the years, but not because I'm ashamed of her, but because I love her." I think that scene pretty much sums up perfectly the way many families feel about their queer children. And I'd like to know about that aspect of the show, about how family and her sister too fit in Anne's story, and why is it so important to show those bonds, especially at that time?
I showed that those relationships because it does reflect the truth of what's in the diary. It's clear from the diary that Anne's family just kind of accepted her for what she was and rarely caused her any problems because of it. And so Anne Lister's 43 in season 2, and I think by that time in her life, her family had kind of got used to the fact that she's not someone you can really argue with. And she was so sure of who she was, and she was so intelligent about who she was, that they had stopped probably trying to do anything about it or to change her or to have those arguments with her. And I think that she looked after her family really well. She certainly looked after her father and her aunt, and she looked after Marion. I mean, it was a complex relationship, but she did look after everyone. You know, Jeremy, her father, was the youngest son of the Lister family, so it was very unlikely that he would ever inherit Shibden. But it did go down that line. But weirdly, it went to her. She was the daughter. She inherited it ahead of Jeremy, and that was because she was known in the family as being such a good businesswoman, and then it was a really good choice to let her have it. So she really looked after everyone, and I think they knew that and they respected that. And so I think they just accepted that she was very unusual and very talented and gifted, and I think that's why no one challenged her over it. I think it was slightly different with her aunt. She really loved her aunt, and her aunt really loved her. She was like a surrogate mother to her, and I think that was a really unconditional relationship. I think, and it's interesting to wonder how much the family actually knew about the extent of her relationships with other women. At the time, they would probably be regarded as romantic relationships by most people. No, but very few people would have understood that they became sexual. And it's a really interesting question about whether her family did. I think her dad did understand that these relationships were sexual, but whether her aunt did or not, I don't think we quite really know that.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've heard of this recurring joke on Twitter that lesbians without electricity, it's sort of like its own genre. Dickinson portrait of Lady on Fire, The World to Come, Gentleman Jack. Why do you think so many queer women love stories are period pieces?
I think because women's history on the whole has been a bit of a subgenre for so long, and certainly queer history has as well, and I think it's just the timing that we can now celebrate these things. We can now look at these people and look at their lives holistically and celebrate who they are. Like Anne Lister, you know, her diary has been studied by academics for a long time. But for a long time, the fact that she was gay was not mentioned. And of course, we can do that now. We live in a world where we can talk about it. And so I guess that's why. I was saying earlier that a lot of the letters I've had from gay women who love the show are letters saying how great it is to know that they've got a predecessor, to know that they have history. So I guess that might account for it, that there's a real market out there for it, and people just realise.
I've been dealing with men all day.
We live in a volatile climate, Miss Lister.
Tiresome, inarticulate men.
Humbug.
Take no notice of your father. He just thinks you might ruin yourself.
And all of us. I don't think you understand the strength of feeling in the town, Mum.